Hi all, welcome back to the Commerce Code. So today we'll be dealing with section 10 of the Indian Contract Act, which basically says about the essentials of a valid contract. As we all know, an agreement that is enforceable by law is called a contract. So all agreements are not contracts, but all contracts are agreements. An agreement to be called a contract shall satisfy certain conditions as laid down in the Indian Contract Act 1872. Section 10 says about what agreements are contracts or what are the essentials of a valid contract. Thus, we can say that all agreements are contracts if they are made by the free consent of parties competent to contract for a lawful consideration and with a lawful object, and are not hereby expressly declared to be void. Thus, there are few elements to a contract, such as free consent of parties, competent parties, lawful consideration, lawful object, and expressly not declared void by law. The very first element is free consent. Section 10 of the Indian Contract Act mandates that free consent is an essential element for a valid contract along with other essentials. According to Section 13, two or more persons consent when they agree upon the same thing in the same sense on the same subject matter, and thus the consent should not be a result of any vitiating factor such as coercion, undue influence, fraud, misrepresentation, or mistake. If the consent was obtained based on any of the above factors, then the contract becomes voidable at the option of the party whose consent was so obtained. If both parties are under a mistake of fact essential to the agreement, then it becomes void. The second element is competency. Section 10 of the Indian Contract Act stipulates that for an agreement to be a legally enforceable contract, it must be made by parties who are competent to contract. There are three key requirements of competency as per Section 11. A person is competent to contract if they meet all the three conditions, such as age of majority. That is, the individual must have attained the age of 18 or 21 if a guardian is appointed by a court. Number two is sound mind. The person must be capable of understanding the contract and forming a rational judgment about its effect on their interest at the time of making the contract. Number three is not disqualified by law. The person must not be disqualified from contracting under any law to which they are subject to. The next essential is lawful consideration. Section 10 of the Act mandates the concept of lawful consideration to make a contract legally enforceable. Consideration means something in written. It can be an act to do something or not to do something, or even a promise done at the desire of the promiser. It basically implies that both parties to a contract should have some sort of gain from the agreement. This consideration shall always be lawful. This consideration will be considered void or illegal if it falls under any of the following categories. Number one, the consideration should not be forbidden by law. It shall not defeat any provision of law. This consideration should not be fraudulent or involve injury to any person or property. And also, the court should not regard this as immoral or opposed to public policy. General rule is that a contract without consideration is void or invalid. But however, Section 25 provides for certain exception, that is, any agreement that is made out of natural love or affection or gift is considered to be valid even though there is no actual consideration involved. The next element is lawful object. That is, the purpose of the contract must not be forbidden by law, fraudulent, immoral, or against public policy, or it shall not involve any sort of injury to another person or property. Thus, a lawful object means the motive or purpose for which the contract is formed is legal and acceptable by law. If it is found to be unlawful, then the entire contract is void from the beginning and is not enforceable in any court of law. The next element is not expressly declared void by law. This means that the agreement must not fall under the specific types of void agreements listed in the Act, such as those made with minors or lacking lawful consideration, etc. Also, Section 26 to 30 exclusively deals with void contracts, such as Section 26 speaks about agreement in restraint of marriage. For example, A agrees with B to pay 10,000 if B does not marry C. This agreement is void. Next is Section 27, that is agreement in restraint of trade. So, any agreement that prohibits a person from exercising a lawful profession, trade, or business is void. Section 28 speaks about agreements in restraint of legal proceedings. That is, an agreement that restricts a person from enforcing their legal rights through courts or reduces the time for doing so is void. For example, an agreement stating neither party will sue the other if the contract is breached is actually void. Section 30 speaks about agreements by way of wager or wagering agreements. That is, agreements to pay money or money's worth based on the uncertain outcome of an event are void. For example, gambling. So, these are the five elements we have discussed so far: free consent, competent parties, lawful consideration, lawful object, and finally, not disqualified by law. Do contact us for detailed notes and lectures. Thank you.